A wrestling match is taking place in a packed arena. Among the spectators is Daniel Kellner, a cybersecurity specialist who works for an intelligence company called WardX. He is approached by two WardX agents, who order him to put his bag down. Instead, Daniel demands to know where his girlfriend Jane is. The agents agree to release her only if he hands over the bag. They seize the bag and begin counting the drives containing the classified files Daniel stole. WardX CEO, Noah, watches him with clear disappointment.
Where's Jane?
Noah asks Daniel who he is working for and demands the names of his accomplices. He then reaches into the bag and pulls out a protective case, only to realize the device inside is missing. Daniel reaches into his pocket, pulls out the device and holds it up. Noah immediately orders his agents to stand down, warning that if they open fire, Daniel could activate it, causing catastrophic consequences. Daniel then ushers Jane into the car while Noah gravely says that if he reveals the information in the files, it won't do the world any good.
I watched the interrogations.
History doesn't have a reset key. If you do this, there's no undoing it.
Daniel simply replies, "That's the plan." Noah then turns his attention to his right-hand man, Boyd.
He sits at a desk. How did he beat you?
Still trying to understand what's happening, especially since she and Daniel have only been dating for a few months, Jane asks him what's going on.
They said you committed treason?
It's not treason. They're not the government and they lie for a living.
Take me home.
They'd be waiting at your apartment.
Daniel then secures the device inside its protective case before contacting his superior, Hugo, to tell him he successfully obtained the files. Hugo says he never doubted him. Daniel says that WardX kidnapped Jane to get to him, then asks where he should deliver the bag. Hugo instructs him to keep it for now, but Daniel, clearly frustrated, reminds him that he's not a field agent. The plan was only for him to steal the files and smuggle the device out of the facility.
Stay with me. We're on plan. Waiting now for someone else to be activated.
Hugo then tells Daniel to share his location once he is secure, so he can send one of his men, Santiago, to pick him up. After ending the call, Daniel wonders aloud where they can stay safe for the night. Jane tells him she knows the perfect place. At WardX, Boyd informs Noah that the Department of Defense wants an update on the stolen files. Noah instructs him to tell them it was just a minor security breach and that recovery efforts are already underway. Boyd then reports that 12 agents have failed to show up for work today, and all of their desks have been cleared out. Noah realizes it's a carefully coordinated operation. He says that if Daniel hasn't released the files yet, then someone else is pulling the strings. Noah then asks Boyd to call Hugo Wakefield. After making the call, Boyd tells him that Hugo failed to report for work and that his desk has been cleared out as well. He adds that the second device has gone missing from the secure storage vault. Noah asks about the third one, and Boyd confirms that it's still locked away in the cold room. Meanwhile, Jane takes Daniel to St. Clara Monastery, where Sister Mora warmly welcomes her. As Mora treats Jane's injuries, the two reminisce about old times. Once she's finished, Mora approaches Daniel and firmly tells him she won't ask who he is, but to leave Jane out of whatever trouble he's brought with him.
You were a nun?
We've had sex. What do you think?
Daniel says he thinks everything she told him about herself is a lie.
Enormous amount of nerve.
He points out that keeping his identity private is part of his job. Then he asks her why she never told him. Jane explains that people tend to judge. She then asks Daniel what exactly he stole. Daniel replies that he stole the data he was paid to protect because people have a right to know the truth. Curious, Daniel asks why she no longer wanted to be a nun. Jane says she lost her calling. She then asks how long he's worked for WardX. Daniel reveals that he was recruited 8 years ago, right after he was released from federal prison, where he served 19 months for cybercrimes.
Even with your record?
Because of my record.
Daniel admits that, until 3 months ago, he didn't know half of what he knows now. He says the truth that WardX discovered doesn't belong to them any more than air or water does. It belongs to all 8 billion people on Earth. The story then shifts to Margaret, a weather reporter for KCXE. Her boyfriend Jackson is watching one of her weather segments on his laptop.
Asked you not to watch those.
It's great.
Don't eat
Jackson
them.
reassures her that she's great, but jokingly points out that she got the forecast wrong because she predicted hail, yet it's perfectly clear outside. Margaret then asks if he watched her audition tape for the weekend news anchor position. Jackson admits he hasn't yet, so he starts the video but stops it halfway through, telling her it was good. Margaret thoughtfully says they need to move. Clearly frustrated, Jackson asks, "Again?" She explains that she wants to move to a bigger city with a larger media market. Jackson reminds her they already moved from Dallas to Kansas, but Margaret admits she never felt she belonged in Dallas. Jackson calmly tells her that he's built a successful music career in Kansas and argues that moving to a new city isn't the solution to every problem. Just then, a cardinal flies in through the window. Jackson asks if she's okay, but suddenly she begins speaking fluent Russian. Completely confused, Jackson asks how she knows Russian. Margaret switches back to English and insists that she never spoke Russian. Then she says she's late for work and quickly leaves. Margaret is singing along to a song while driving when a police officer pulls her over for speeding. Looking at him, Margaret calmly says he's having a bad day. She tells him his wife didn't mean to snap at him and is only sleep-deprived from taking care of the baby. She then suggests he bring her the red velvet cupcakes she loves. Margaret reassures him that he doesn't regret having the baby and that he's nothing like his father. The officer is left speechless as Margaret drives away. At the news station, the reporters are covering the escalating global crisis, explaining that World War III appears to be imminent as Russia and the United States prepare to launch missiles if ordered, while civilians living near key military installations have already begun evacuating. Margaret arrives at the station, where her boss, Clay, is clearly unhappy that she's late. Margaret apologizes and explains that she was pulled over by a police officer, adding that something strange happened because she somehow knew personal details about his life. Before she can finish, Clay cuts her off and tells her that she'll be on the air in 90 seconds. Then she looks at one of her co-workers. Margaret tells her that she needs to leave her abusive husband because both she and her daughter have suffered enough. She is told the weather conditions. As the camera goes live, Margaret freezes, then suddenly starts clicking her tongue and making strange hissing sounds instead of speaking. Clay immediately orders the crew to cut to a commercial break. Margaret suddenly collapses and loses consciousness. At the monastery, Daniel is awakened by the sound of Santiago's car horn blaring outside. Daniel tells Jane he'll come back for her before heading out, but to his surprise, she follows him to the car. He tells her to go back inside, but she refuses. During the drive, Daniel calls Hugo and asks how much longer he needs to keep the bag. Hugo tells him not to worry, assuring him that he's in good hands with Santiago, who is taking him to a safe house. He tells Daniel to call him once he reaches the safe house. Back at Wardex, Defense General Dobbs is furious about the stolen data and offers to deploy 12,000 FBI field agents to hunt Daniel down. Noah rejects the idea, arguing that such a massive operation would attract too much attention. Just then, one of the agents informs Noah that a viral clip of a local weather reporter from Kansas has begun circulating online. Noah asks for her name, and the agent replies, "Margaret Fairchild, born in California." He then asks whether her voice matched the dialect samples in the files.
Yes, and it matched.
At a hospital, Margaret undergoes an MRI scan. After reviewing the results, the doctor tells her that everything appears normal. Margaret asks if she's certain, insisting that something is happening to her. The doctor asks whether she's been under a lot of stress, but Margaret shakes her head.
Your father had Parkinson's?
Are you saying that's what it is?
No, not necessarily.
Margaret tells her that her father was 47 years old when he died, and that she was only a teenager at the time. Looking outside, she asks if the men outside are watching them. The doctor replies that they're FBI agents who simply have a few questions for her. Quietly, Margaret says they aren't really FBI agents. The doctor then asks whether Margaret ever received counseling after the traumatic incident she experienced when she was 10 years old. Margaret glances at Jackson, assuming he must have told the doctor about it. She explains that she barely remembers what happened because she was only 10 at the time. The doctor presses further, asking whether she has nightmares related to the incident. Margaret says no, but Jackson admits that she has them all the time. They involve butterflies, a Hansel and Gretel-style house in the woods, and that she even sings children's songs in her sleep. Frustrated, Margaret asks Jackson why he would tell the doctor all of that. He shrugs. A moment later, Margaret suddenly says that they want someone named David Kellner dead. She quietly asks Jackson to pretend she needs help getting to the bathroom. Jackson asks what she's doing, but she insists they need to leave immediately. She then looks at him.
Oh, you gotta be kidding me.
Meanwhile, Daniel and Jane arrive at the safe house. Once inside, Daniel notices a group of deer staring at him. Jane then asks him to explain what's going on. Daniel reveals that WARDX stands for Waved Reporting, Development, and Extraction. She asks who was with Nixon. Daniel replies that it was a popular TV star from the 1950s whom Nixon wanted to impress. Jane watches as medical technicians pull the sheets off several aliens. Daniel connects another drive, revealing footage of an alien named Imvivoten being subjected to a painful medical procedure without anesthesia while crying out in agony. Noah warns the technicians to be careful, reminding them that they had already lost another alien during the same procedure. He tells Jane that the remaining drives contain 79 more years' worth of data. He also reveals that Wardex, along with the Department of Defense, has been reverse engineering alien technology since the early 1970s without any government funding. He explains that the technology they've developed is incredibly profitable, but in the wrong hands, it could become a devastating weapon.
What are you gonna do?
Full disclosure to the whole world.
But she warns that people may begin to see the aliens as deities and abandon their faith in God. Daniel points out that she left the church. Jane replies that she didn't leave because she stopped believing in God, but because she could no longer say with certainty that God is truly divine. Even so, she says God is essential because he holds civilization together. She argues that, with World War III already looming, exposing the truth now would only trigger panic and chaos. Ignoring her warning, Daniel says he's going to contact Hugo, picks up the bag, and leaves. At Wardex, Boyd retrieves the device from cold storage and warns Noah that only Hugo knows how to operate it, as he's the only person who has ever formed a relationship with an alien. Noah simply orders him to give the device. Using the device, Noah attempts to take control of Daniel's mind, but the attempt fails, leaving him in excruciating pain. Concerned, Boyd asks what happened. Noah says that he saw Daniel's face for only a split second before it felt as though all the air had been sucked out of his lungs. Boyd suggests that Daniel might be an experiencer, meaning someone who has had direct contact with an alien, which explains why he can't be mind-controlled. Thinking quickly, Boyd decides to mind-control Jane. Back with Margaret, they successfully escape the hospital. Just then, she receives a call from an unknown number. It's Hugo.
I've been waiting a very long time to meet you, Miss Fairchild.
Confused, she asks him who he is. Hugo simply replies, "A friend," adding that she should already know who he is. Margaret says she has no idea who he is and admits that she's frightened out of her wits.
Because you're just a passenger on your way somewhere.
Hugo tells her to let them help her get there. He adds that they've known about her all along but waited until they saw the news report before reaching out. Out of nowhere, Margaret asks Hugo who 8732626 is. Hugo calmly replies that she already knows. "Daniel Kellner," Margaret whispers. Hugo then tells her to trust her instincts and advises her to go in the direction she feels inclined to. Before ending the call, he instructs her to destroy the phone so no one else can track her. Margaret asks how he'll be able to find her afterward. Hugo simply replies that he has confidence she will find them. Margaret immediately throws the phone out of the car window. Jackson shouts that it costs $600, but she ignores him and tells him to run over the phone. Then, Margaret asks him to drive north. Confused, Jackson asks why. She says that's where Daniel is. Frustrated, Jackson asks if Daniel is someone from her past.
I don't know what I'm doing here. I don't know who he is. I just know he's someplace north.
Daniel contacts Hugo. Hugo tells him to watch the video he just sent.
She's the one we've been waiting for. Her? Did you not hear her?
Don't be afraid of what you don't know. That's all she had to say.
But Hugo explains that they couldn't understand it because it wasn't in English. Daniel laughs and tells him that it actually was English. Hugo then tells Daniel that he'll send a car the following morning to take him to Kansas City, where the woman is from, and instructs him to stay at a local motel for the night.
There are two of you, Daniel.
Meanwhile, Noah successfully places Jane under mind control. Noah suddenly appears before her. He casually greets her and asks her to take a seat before questioning her about her location. Jane tightly clutches the cross and says she doesn't know where she is. As Jane grips the cross even tighter, she manages to sever Noah's psychic connection with her. The agents notice that Noah's heart rate and sodium levels are rapidly rising. Concerned, they urge him to stop, but Noah simply re-establishes the connection. This time, he sternly asks Jane where she was the previous night.
Monastery of St. Clair of the Dawn.
He then asks whether they passed any street signs.
Sykesville.
What else did you pass?
A river.
Using Jane's answers, the agents narrow down Daniel's location to a remote farmhouse. Noah immediately deploys a team of agents to capture them. He then asks Jane for a favor. If his agents don't get the chance to kill Daniel, she must do it herself, because the world cannot handle the information Daniel is about to reveal. Jane breaks the connection once again, but Noah again takes control of her mind and mentally compels her to pick up the chopping knife. At the same time, Margaret senses that Daniel is in danger. She immediately asks Jackson for his phone. Jackson, annoyed, asks if she's going to throw his phone away too. Ignoring the remark, Margaret calls Daniel.
They found you. I don't know who you are, and I don't know who they are, but they're gonna kill you. They are gonna kill you.
Give me my phone! Give me my phone! Maggie, give me my phone!
Daniel notices that Ward X agents have surrounded the entire farmhouse. Thinking fast, he sneaks into one of the agents' vehicles and crashes it straight into the house. He quickly gets Jane into the car and speeds away. Several Ward X vehicles immediately give chase. During the pursuit, Noah regains control of Jane's mind and compels her to stab Daniel with the chopping knife. Just as she's about to strike, one of the pursuing vehicles slams into the car, causing her to lose her grip and drop the knife. Jane drives the knife into her own hand. The intense pain breaks Noah's control. One of the agents picks up the device, but he suddenly loses consciousness. Another agent picks it up moments later, but this time nothing happens. Soon after, the pursuing agents open fire on Daniel and Jane. Jane apologizes for nearly stabbing him. Daniel reassures her, saying that he knew Noah was the one controlling her. Eventually, they reach a dead end. Daniel grabs Jane's arm and tells her to run, but she stops him. Instead, she places a rock on the accelerator, sending the empty car plunging into the water, making it appear as though they had driven off the edge and drowned. Sometime later, Margaret and Jackson stop at a gas station, where panicked people are stocking up on supplies as fears of World War III continue to spread. Margaret says they need to find Daniel. Jackson argues that they should go back to the hospital instead.
If I moved, you'd stay. What? Kansas City, you want me to move, you're gonna stay.
Claiming he needs to buy some water, Jackson heads into the store. Once inside, he calls the doctor and tells him that Margaret's condition is getting worse. He says he'll bring her back to the hospital as soon as possible. Minutes later, Jackson returns from the store only to discover that Margaret is gone.
She said to say she loves you, but she's going east.
That night, Daniel and Jane check into a motel. Daniel asks Hugo why he has to go to Kansas City, but Hugo remains silent. Daniel then admits that he's starting to remember strange things. Friendly, yet terrifying animals staring at him, leaving him unable to look away no matter how hard he tries.
It wasn't your idea to recruit me, was it? Not just for this, but to Ward X in the first place.
No.
He goes on to say that there are parts of his childhood he simply can't remember, and that the missing memories frighten him. Hugo reassures him, telling him not to worry because he'll be there for him, along with someone else. He then instructs Daniel to go to KCXE news station the following morning. Fearing Noah might mind control Jane again, Daniel removes anything that could reveal their location. He then asks Jane to listen to the recording Hugo sent him.
You understand what she's saying?
I hear it's gibberish. I can't understand it.
But Daniel says he can understand it perfectly because it is mathematics, which his mind automatically translates into English. Then, she asks Daniel to tie her up so she can't hurt him. Reluctantly, he agrees. At midnight, Noah mind-controlled Jane and uses her to learn the motel's name. Not long afterward, Santiago arrives at the motel to pick them up. However, he stops when he sees several Ward X vehicles surrounding the motel and quickly drives away.
They're burned.
Daniel wakes Jane and tells her they've been found. He helps her escape through the bathroom window, hands her the device, and tells her to protect it at all costs. Jane begs him to come with her, but he tells her to go. Moments later, Ward X agents storm the room and capture Daniel. Jane escapes deep into the woods. After searching Daniel's bag, the agents realize the device is missing. They demand to know where it is, but Daniel simply smiles. Daniel is then taken to Black Site military base. Noah gets straight to the point, first asking Daniel what he did with the device before asking him to reveal exactly what Hugo's operation is. Margaret finds Daniel's location. One of the agents stops her at the entrance. Margaret correctly states his name, Thomas, along with his ID number. The agent lets her pass. Inside the facility, Margaret comes face to face with Daniel. Using her newfound ability, Margaret makes Noah see the person he desires most. His late wife, Jocelyn. Boyd tries to restrain Margaret, but Noah stops him and orders all the agents to stand down. Margaret grabs the bag with hard drives and tries to leave the base. Boyd orders the agents to stop them. However, Margaret uses her ability on several agents, causing them to let them pass without resistance. Surprised, Daniel asks how she knows all those people. Margaret simply replies, "I don't." Boyd grabs his gun and keys and sets off to kill them. As they drive away, Daniel asks Margaret where she's taking them. "Kansas City," she replies. When he asks why, she admits she doesn't know. Margaret then looks at him and says that he has been to jail before. Startled, he asks how she knows. She explains that whenever she looks at someone, she can suddenly see moments from their life and even feel the emotions they experienced. She tells Daniel that, at that very moment, his injured shoulder is throbbing with pain and that he's thinking about Jane. Margaret reveals that this strange ability only appeared the previous day after a bird flew through her window. Daniel asks, "A cardinal?" Surprised, Margaret asks how he knew. Daniel explains that when he was 20 and in college, he experienced something similar.
You were flunking out, basically.
I was pretty smart.
You were, but it was the partying, the drugs. I mean, ketamine, come on, dude.
Please stop.
Sorry,
He clears his throat and continues. One day, while lying in bed, he felt as though someone was watching him. When he opened his eyes, he saw a cardinal perched on his window. From that moment on, everything changed. He suddenly began understanding complex patterns and entire arrays fully solved inside his mind. Margaret continues, saying that he hated it because his ability made him feel isolated, until he met Jane. He smiles.
Don't be afraid of what you don't know. That's what you said on TV.
They said I was talking nonsense.
I understood every word.
Just then, Boyd catches up to them and repeatedly rams their vehicle toward a moving train. Their car becomes hooked onto the train. Daniel manages to climb out of the car and leaps onto the train's ladder as Boyd shoots at them. At the very last second, Margaret grabs Daniel's hand, and the two barely manage to pull themselves aboard. Once inside the train, Margaret suddenly suffers a panic attack, shouting that she can't feel her hands and that she's developing Parkinson's disease, just like her father. Daniel eventually calms her down by placing her hands on the piano strings. She thanks him. Meanwhile, Hugo realizes that Noah is trying to get into his mind. He immediately tells his agents to leave the room.
Colin was an experiencer, wasn't he?
Yes.
And in Vivo 17 told you to recruit him.
Yes.
Noah argues that if Daniel is following the aliens' plan, then he is serving their interests, not humanity's. Hugo disagrees, explaining that the aliens view empathy as an evolutionary advantage, while humanity's inability to embrace it is driving civilization toward war and possible extinction.
And is your bleeding heart why you helped it escape?
Yes.
Furious, Noah asks Hugo how he could lie to him for 5 years and when he lost his mind. Hugo calmly replies that it happened around the same time Noah lost his own mind, when his wife died.
When she died, you reduced everyone to need to know, including me. And Vivo 17 is non-human, but nearer to God, Noah, than you or I. You don't need to fear them.
Noah insists that revealing the truth to the public would destroy the existing world order. Just then, 2 agents enter to report something urgent. Hugo quickly ushers them back outside, but Noah catches a glimpse of them. He immediately orders his team to pull up the files of the 12 employees who failed to report to work the previous day. Noah orders the agents to trace the last known locations of their phones, and they do. At a local diner, Jane calls Maura and asks whether God only loves humans because Genesis describes them as his supreme creation. Maura gently corrects her, explaining that humanity is God's supreme creation on Earth. Jane then asks whether there could be other intelligent beings in the universe. Maura says she believes there probably are, reasoning that God would not create a universe so vast if it existed only for humans. Jane asks if it would frighten her if someone proved to her they weren't alone. Maura asks why it would. Jane asks Maura to see where KCXE is located, remembering it from the clip Daniel showed her. Curious, Daniel asks Margaret whether she remembers anything from her childhood. Margaret says she doesn't remember anything before the age of 10. Then, they notice a fox watching them. At that moment, Santiago arrives in a fire truck, accompanied by several of Hugo's agents. They escort Daniel and Margaret to a hidden warehouse. Hugo greets Daniel, who hands him the bag containing the evidence. Hugo then asks Margaret whether she knows who he is. She says yes. Margaret then begins telling the names of every agent standing around her. Confused, she asks why her childhood home has been recreated inside the warehouse. Shaken, Margaret says she doesn't want to become anyone's religion. She slowly walks through the reconstructed house and enters her childhood bedroom. Looking at Hugo, she asks why he rebuilt it.
To return you to your experience.
Daniel asks Hugo what experience he means. Hugo replies that it's the one he shared with Margaret. He gently asks Margaret how much she remembers about that night. Margaret firmly says she doesn't want to remember.
Everything that happened to you on the 23rd of February, 1996 is blocked.
Hugo explains that only by unlocking those buried memories will she discover her true purpose and finally stop being a passenger. He tells her that what had remained dormant inside her only awakened the previous day. while Daniel's gift was activated 15 years ago. Hugo tells them that both of them were chosen by the aliens. He explains that the aliens gifted Daniel with an extraordinary understanding of mathematics so he could understand the aliens, while Margaret was gifted empathy so she could help them communicate with humanity. Hugo then hands them the device. He asks Margaret to look around the room and think back to when she was a 10-year-old girl asleep in her bed when something woke her up. Margaret continues, saying that she sang her song. Then, a deer, a cardinal, a fox, and a raccoon approach young Margaret. Daniel instinctively shouts for young Margaret not to follow them, but Hugo calms him, explaining that the aliens take the form of animals to appear non-threatening. Margaret remembers following the animals to a house, much like in Hansel and Gretel. Once inside, the animals shed their disguises and reveal their true alien forms. Young Margaret reassures a frightened Daniel that everything will be okay. Moments later, both children are imbued with extraordinary abilities. Outside, Wardeck's agents surround the warehouse. Boyd informs Noah that thermal imaging shows 43 heat signatures inside the building.
They found us.
Margaret asks Hugo to hand her the device. Using it, she cloaks the house and everyone in it. She quietly warns the group that the cloaking effect won't last long. She tells them they need to move slowly and carefully. At that moment, Noah hears a faint noise and orders his agents to investigate the area. The group manages to reach the truck and escapes. A short while later, they arrive at the KCXE news station. Inside, the reporter warns that World War III is escalating, with the European Union closing its borders amid concerns over a possible incoming missile strike. Margaret spots Clay and uses her power to convince him to let her go live at the anchor desk to deliver a special news report. He nods. Daniel asks Clay how to reach the control room, and Clay points him in the right direction. Then, Margaret's co-worker mentions that she and her daughter have moved out of her husband's house and are now living with her sister. Margaret smiles. In the control room, Daniel begins copying the data from the hard drives to the station's broadcast system. Outside, Noah orders his two teams to locate the station's main power supply and backup generator. They destroy the main power source, plunging the building into darkness. Seconds later, the emergency backup generator automatically kicks in. At that very moment, Jane also arrives at the news station. Just as Margaret is about to begin the broadcast, Noah's team shuts down the backup generator. Noah walks into the station. Moments later, Jane rushes toward Margaret and hands her the device, urging her to tell the truth. Using the device, Margaret restores power to the station. Boyd asks Noah if he's not going to stop them, but Noah quietly sits down. Frustrated, Boyd storms off. Margaret begins the broadcast, dubbing it Disclosure Day. Footage dating back to the infamous 1947 Roswell incident reveals that aliens were recovered and secretly experimented on for decades. She says that Wardex, along with the Department of Defense, has suppressed the data and conducted inhumane experiments on the aliens. Back in the control room, Daniel instructs the station director to contact the New York Control Center so other networks can carry the live broadcast. Before long, the feed is picked up worldwide, and the rest of the world tunes in. Hugo then brings in Vivo 17. The alien speaks to Daniel in its own language, and Daniel translates the message for Margaret.
Listen.